What I'm going to propose you is the simple technique. How do you present yourself?
Okay. I suppose a bit different than a lot of people. I am, my name is Shirley Barclay. That's my everyday world name. My name is Moonstone Dove. That's my Cherokee name. My name is Wambly Sakiwia, and it means Eagle Claw Woman, and that is my Lakota name. My father was Wild Horse. I'm a direct descendant of major leaders, and I walk a spiritual path in the indigenous world, not just in this country, in the United States, but also in other countries. I've traveled all over the world, and my pipe is part of that. My mother was German and Swiss. My grandmother was Cherokee, and for 3 generations my family hid who they were. I was gifted from the time I was 3 and taught the indigenous ways, and also was told that if I was lucky at some point in my life I could be who I was, otherwise it would fall to the future generations because of the danger and what was happening to the indigenous children everywhere. And it's not just in the Americas, this was happening all over the world and still is. I'm well educated in the everyday world. I have all kinds of designations. I'm a trainer in Psychodrama, Sociometry and Group Psychotherapy. I also have a master's in nursing. I have, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I have a background in cultural and medical anthropology. I have a background in cross-religious studies. I have a background in
Why are you laughing?
Many things. Alternative medical practices.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I learned in my life is that I was blessed and cursed with something called curiosity.
Mm.
There were things when I was a little girl, like the Valdez Peninsula. I had a big puzzle when I was a kid. And for whatever reasons, when I was 5, I used to trace a part of that puzzle. It was big, you know. And my dad would say, well, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know, but I really like this place. Much later in my life, I was in Argentina and had been working with the people and stuff. And my friend and I decided to go to, that weekend we didn't have anything to do, so we flew to the Valdez. Well, to Patagonia. I didn't know it was the Valdez until we got there. To Pyramides. And I was looking at it, and we went out on the boat, and I began to listen to the whales, and I went, so I carry a lot of interesting gifts. I call myself a Wyrd Duck because a part of my lineage is Scandinavian. And the healer people in the Scandinavia, they call it the Wyrding way. And so I learned that I walk the Wyrding way. And I say duck because I'm indigenous. When I really was able to step fully open, out in the open in the indigenous ways, I was also part of the Native American church, which is peyote religion, and one of the symbols for that is the water bird.
Mm-hmm.
one of the water birds is the duck. The thing about the water birds is that they're in the water, they can fly, they can be on land, they sit on their eggs, so they deal with heat, they deal with all four of the elements. And so people, I was taught it was wrong to lie. It's not a good thing. And that to keep your word, there wasn't anything more important. Murder wasn't as bad as breaking your word.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that, my dad would tell me, look, if you give your word and you don't keep it, then people lose faith and they lose trust. They don't feel safe anymore. And they don't trust. And so it becomes really important that you keep your word.
Mm-hmm.
It was really important, and one of the things that we all, me and my brothers, were all taught, you do not break your word, period. If you do, you got a bunch of cleaning up to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with an extraordinary education in many ways, from the everyday world perspective and from the indigenous perspective, and I had major teachers across the board. And I came along at a time that I had seminal teachers. Those are major teachers who create events, ways like Moreno created Psychodrama, Young did Collective Unconscious, and so, you know, Eric Byrne, Al Shefflin, and Stanley Diamond in the anthropology world, and Margaret Mead, Buckminster Fuller was my teacher,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Campbell, and you know, the quality of the people that over time that I ended up working with were extraordinary.
Now, you mentioned Moreno. What is, when we talk about the Morenos, not only him, but also Zerka, what comes immediately to your mind?
The first time I met him, you know, over the years, I met a lot of people who knew the Morenos. I mean, I knew the seminal people in the method. And I went out of curiosity more than anything else. There was a major conference in Texas, and I was in graduate school, and me and the students, we went, because these were these, you know, I mean, after all, he'd written a chapter in the Handbook of Psychiatry, so
Mm-hmm.
it was worth hearing, I heard. I'd had a whole experience with Carl Rogers and stuff, and so I couldn't even begin to think of anything more strong than that.
Mm-hmm.
Until I met the Morenos. I had the unique experience, and I don't think very many people had this, of working with both of them at the same time.
When was it?
1967 or 68.
And where?
Arlington, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
There were about 280 people there, and they had small group leaders and the Morenos talking and that kind of thing. And I'd had this experience at the Carl Rogers thing, and I talked to them, you know, like stupid graduate students. They don't know when to shut up. So, besides, I was curious. What was this big deal about? So I raised my hand. They called on me. So I told them what happened. I said, now, how can psychodrama compare to that? And Zerka and Moreno looked at each other and grinned and said, my dear. You want to, or do you want me to? Oh, go ahead, my dear. She looked and she grinned and she said, well, while we're here, We invite you to come up on this stage and find out. Would you like to come now? And Moreno's sitting there with this great big smile going. I mean, later, of course, I understood that they knew exactly what was going on and that they knew that one day I would step up on that stage, probably not then. And which did happen 2 days later. And we started into that, and I got way more than I bargained for. And when Moreno asked a question at one point, and I said, I don't want to go there. Oh, he says. We're going to have shades on our psychodrama. And Zerka's over there chuckling. And I looked at him and I said, we sure as hell are. This is Texas. You don't do that kind of stuff here. Whereupon they just backed up, went around, and the next thing I knew, I was in the big middle of it at the end. I was sobbing. I was in so much pain, and I was so angry. And I didn't know what to do with any of it, and I damn sure didn't know what to do with that kind of exposure in front of all the professionals, because they were all professionals, and I was a stupid graduate student. Not stupid, but foolish maybe. And Zerka and Moreno both look at the people. She looked at him and he said, go ahead. And she said, she needs connection now. But she can't take any more words. She can't. She doesn't know how to come back from where she just went. You can help her with that, but you have to do it non-verbally. And don't everyone rush at once. And so I don't know how long it lasted. But people came, some crying, some just to touch my face, some to say, my God. It changed my life. Moreno and Zerka both talked to me later, a couple days later, and next day too. Said that I should come to Beacon, which I did eventually do. Not so much further away either. And I had a really good psychiatrist because I was dealing with really core stuff from craziness of my life and the way the indigenous people were dealt with, and I didn't fit in either world because I looked like my mother, who was European, and I was indigenous to the core and had to learn how to be in the everyday world. So I walked between the worlds. Went through a whole lot of stuff over time. Met some really special people and eventually became a trainer. And have worked in the psychodrama and in family systems. And I mean, I couldn't stop. I had to know, I had to understand. I went to cultural and medical anthropology later to understand. I did cross-religious studies to understand. I had to know why it was the way it was, whatever life is. And I had the gift of foresight, which I worked hard not to develop. And the reason for that was, for me, it bordered too close to misuse of power. I didn't think we had a right to tell anybody what needed to happen in their life or what that was about. And so many things happened, and I just continued. I ended up going to Argentina. working with the whales because I could talk to the creatures and critters, and they gave me a lot of information, stuff that I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I don't know what to say about all that. I'm just what I call a weird duck. W-Y-R-D. And which is a really honest statement, but people think I say, well, I'm a weird, W-I-E-R-D, and I'm not. I just happen to be very gifted.
Mm-hmm.
What's more, I'm a healer, and what's more, life matters to me. How we deal with each other, how we treat each other, sharing, honoring, and respecting each other. I knew from the very beginning that we're all one being. I knew it. None of the religions made much sense to me, except the indigenous ways, because there were these words, you know, we're all one. Mitakuye is in the Lakota world. You lived your life in a way that served life. I was taught that from the get-go. My parents lived that way. My father was one of the creators of boys baseball that later became Boys Baseball Incorporated. There were 5 men in Dallas who did that. My mother was very involved in all of that. I mean, you know, she was pretty out there in a lot of ways, but she was gifted and brilliant too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we grew up with that. We grew up with responsibility and commitment, and that we had to care for other people, and other people would then be able to care back. And it wasn't that there was a formula for it. And I met many people that, you know, and like Buckminster Fuller, when I met him, my memory of Buckminster Fuller is that he was like a leprechaun that was moving around all the time because he was short. But that man, oh my God, one of the things he said, the only thing possible is the impossible. Don't ever sell yourself short by thinking it's limited. Moreno and Zerka used to talk about that, and about the possibility of connection all over the world, and that we had to help each other out, and that we had to come together as a unit. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the dreams that these people had were mine. And so I lived my life based on possibilities and dreams that I did everything I knew how to do to make happen, and a lot of them I did.
Mm-hmm.